119th contact Saturday, February 3, 1979, 2:46 p.m., pages 335, 347. Billy says once again, you needed an extremely long time before you found the way to me again. About a week ago, it was also the case that I had been called for sure by you, but then, around the 4th hour of the morning, your call suddenly faded away, and nothing else happened until today. Semyaza says sure, that's right. We were actually here to see you, but then we were quite suddenly ordered away because unknown flying devices were approaching our station, with which we've already busied ourselves for months, but we cannot make any contact with them. Billy says by that, you mean the UFOs that showed up recently in Italy and Australia and in various other countries? Semyaza says sure. These flying devices are obviously constructions of a very well-developed technology, which is not yet so advanced, however, that they could move into our refined areas of communication. Billy says by that you probably mean, at the same time, your somewhat different physical structure, right? By that, I mean even the dimensional difference, through which you, in a moderate measure, exhibit different and much finer vibrations compared to us earthworms. Semyaza says sure. Billy says and you have no idea where these UFOs come from and what human races manufacture and pilot these. Patar says there is complete uncertainty about that. Every contact attempt has been unsuccessful so far, unfortunately. It seems to be absolutely the case that they do not perceive us at all. Billy says but you could, nevertheless, simply fly up to these unknown flying objects. Patar says that cannot be done, unfortunately, because the objects depart immediately, as soon as a flying device that is foreign to them approaches them. Billy says I find that crazy. After all, you should have certain possibilities with your highly developed technology. Quetzal says even our possibilities are limited. You're only looking at everything from the perspective of an earthly standpoint, whereby you overestimate our technology, at least in this case. Billy says that is possible, and I see, therefore, that even for you, limits are set in certain matters of technology. Quetzal says that is of correctness. But now, I would like to give you my best wishes for the start of your 42nd year of life. We have only come here today for this reason. Billy says dear thanks, Quetzal, and also you too, Semyaza and Patar, I would like to thank very cordially. Semyaza says under no circumstances did I want to fail to greet you today and to give you my dearest wishes. Patar says I've also come here with the same wishes for you. Billy says you making me rather embarrassed, but I am very happy and thank you very much. But on the other hand, I must already say that you behave rather peculiarly, namely just like earthlings. After all, such birthday wishes are otherwise not your style. Quetzal says that is of correctness, but especially Semyaza has pushed very much to offer you wishes in this form because through this, we can draw you near to how much we are already connected with earthly things, in reference to certain common interests of the human beings of Earth. Billy says that makes me very happy. Have my cordial thanks for that. But I suspect now that you haven't only come to congratulate me, right? Semyaza says yes, we have, because we actually only wanted to give you our wishes, but also the wishes of all others, who couldn't come here, unfortunately. Patar says that is the truth. We simply wanted to exchange a few words with you, greet you and congratulate you, and be together with you for a short time. Quetzal says that is of correctness. Billy says now you're really making me embarrassed. Couldn't we talk about other things? I have all sorts of questions that will certainly make me less embarrassed. I don't mean to say that I am not happy about your visit and your very dear wishes, quite the opposite, but it just makes me embarrassed and uneasy. I'm not very used to congratulations. Semyaza says sure, I already understand, and if you feel better through another conversation or through a questioning, then we will gladly comply with your wish. Billy says that is very kind of you. Very many thanks. Look here is an entire stack of descriptive sheets. I have them fully written with cosmic and mathematical calculations regarding various things. In the main, this was all about calculating the expansion rate of the creation and, thus, also of the universe. With this, I wanted to work out the distance of the diameter of the universe and thereby came across the following results, if I may present these. Semyaza says sure, just speak. Quetzal says you shouldn't have succeeded in getting the right data calculation because you would have needed certain basic data for that, which you could not have at your disposal. However, you apparently got involved in something in this respect, which you probably would have better omitted. Hence, your disappointment shouldn't just be mild, which is why you had better leave out this question. Patar says that should correspond to the correctness. Billy says, are you really also of the same view as Quetzal, Patar? Patar says, I have just made my opinion known to you. Billy says, and you, girl? Semyaza says, I find that unfair of Father and Quetzal. Just ask your questions, because I am sure that you would never present calculation questions to us if you weren't sure and confident to a very high percentage that your calculations were right. I am confident that your calculations are of importance and contain, at worst, only small errors that are of insignificance. Billy says, is that really your opinion? Semyaza says, but of course, because I know you very well and know so very exactly that you really would never approach us with such questions if you weren't sure of your case. Patar says, but now, in this case, this might be an exaggeration, my child. Quetzal says that is also my view. It would be a pointless endeavor to listen to these questions. Semyaza says that is very intolerant of you both. On the other hand, you should, nevertheless, know our friend better. At least give him a chance, because he has very much more than just earned this through all his surely very great efforts with his calculations, even if these are faulty, which I do not presume, however, and could not understand. Patar says, in this light, your argumentation is of correctness, then it should be so. Bring forth your questions, my friend. Billy says, and you, Quetzal, do you also agree with it? Quetzal says, if Patar gives consent, then I will argue nothing against it, even though everything in this regard seems senseless to me. I myself, as well as Patar and our scientists, could only take on and carry out these calculations if we had the necessary basic data for this. Billy says, then that means that you can't give me any information if I tell you my data and calculations? Quetzal says, no, my words weren't meant in such a way. They only referred to the fact that we couldn't carry out these calculations without certain basic data. We couldn't calculate these necessary basic data ourselves, however. But we can give you information, of course, because we do know the data, which we ourselves haven't calculated but which we otherwise received. However, it is my view that even if you had come into possession of the necessary basic data, which I rather doubt, you yourself could not carry out the calculations because certain calculation formulas and arithmetic formulas are of necessity, in order to work out the exact results. But you cannot know these calculation and arithmetic formulas because they move in a cosmic structure. Billy says that can, indeed, be determined easily when I bring out my questions. But tell me, where did you get the basic data for these calculations? And you know, with some logical reflection, one can also find out certain structures and formulas, even if afterwards, one cannot neatly explain the entire development. One does know how one has done something, but one cannot explain it. Quetzal says that is of correctness, what you explain, because these interesting processes are very well known to me from my own experience. And since you say that, everything makes me somewhat reflective. But to your question, we, that is, our scientists, retrieved the basic data known to us from a cosmic memory block approximately 2,700 years ago. That's how they are known to us. Oh, so have you, perhaps, done the same? Billy says no, I haven't done that, which I can assure you. Quetzal says now, I am actually interested in your questions and calculations. Present them to us. Billy says happy to do so, my son. Thus, my first question is the speed of light constant of presently 299,792.5 kilometers per second, which is calculated by our earthly scientists, correct? Quetzal says this figure is of correctness. But I notice with your question that you speak of a present constant. What do you want to express with that? Billy says I have calculated that the light constant steadily decreases within the framework of a certain half-life. Quetzal says but that is not. Semyaza says you see now, and you too, father. I knew it. You may never underestimate him. His calculations are definitely at least extremely close to the truth, if not even error-free. But it also could not be otherwise with him, when he wants to present such things to us. Just think of his mystery, which surrounds him and which we still cannot fathom. Patar says that is unbelievable. How could you find out that the constant of light is only apparently of stability? Billy says you will learn but yet, if you want to listen to my other questions. Patar says you make me very curious. Billy says good, then the next question is my calculation right, that only in the present creation universe, a day amounts to 311,040, 30 years, as Genesis explains this. Quetzal says that is naturally of correctness. Billy says good, so then a creation hour in the present material evolution universe amounts to 12,960,000,000,000 years, a minute amounts to 216 billion years, and a second amounts to 3.6 billion years, while a creation age, then, would have to be calculated at 25,920,000,000,000 years. Everything is reckoned according to terrestrial years, of course. Patar says that, yes, that's right. Billy says very well, then, once again, a Genesis calculation a day of the first material creation universe evolving in this form amounts to 311,040, 30 well-known years of earthly chronology, and this is calculated from the first beginning of its becoming up to the last iota of its passing. In a 7x7-fold form, the length of day of creation increases with every new and higher developed universe, so the next universe and, thus, creation would have to have a longer day, which is to be calculated at 2,177,280, 30 years, according to which, then, the calculation would have to look like this first materially evolving universe 311,040, 30 years second materially evolving universe 2,177,280, 30 years third materially evolving universe 15,240,960, 30 years fourth materially evolving universe 106,686,720, 30 years fifth materially evolving universe 746,807,040, 30 years sixth materially evolving universe 5,227,649,280, 30 years seventh materially evolving universe 36,593,544,960, 30 years after the first course material universe, the coarse material matter refines itself from universe to universe, until with seventh stage, all of the coarse material matter is changed to fine materiality. After the seventh development, the creation would then have to evolve to the your creation and carry out the corresponding transformation. Now, my calculations don't include the last figures, but they agree in the large values. Is this right? Quetzal says this question is superfluous because you know about the correctness of the calculation itself. Billy says thanks. So then to the next question, is it right if I have calculated that space and time are separate and independent, in their course, from the creation itself because this is determined by space and time themselves? Patar says your calculation is right. Billy says thanks. Then is it also right that in the next material evolution universe, a creation hour amounts to 90 trillion and 720 billion years, a minute amounts to 1 trillion and 512 billion years, and a second is accordingly 60 times less? Quetzal says you know that you don't have to ask because the calculation is of correctness. Billy says then just not. But is it right now, if I have calculated that the creation's expansion rate, for the initial period, was 44,069,497.5 kilometers per second, with a steadily constant half-life rate of almost exactly 6,347,755,102,040 years, from which the results arise that the expansion rate of the creation at its universal beginning was 147 times the speed of today's speed of light constant, but this speed decreased with the half-life of 6,347,755,102,040 years and continues to decrease. So the starting point of today's light constant lay at a speed 344,292.9 kilometers per second, but through the already elapsed portion of half-time, it has already dropped by 44,500.4 kilometers per second, whereby the present and current light constant of 299,792.5 kilometers per second arises, according to which an original light year, from the starting point of the current light constant, of around 1.390 x 1015 kilometers has amounted. This means, according to my calculations, that the constant of 1 second of the initial period of the expansion rate must have been 147 times faster than the constant of 1 second today, because at that time, around 46 trillion years ago, the speed of light was even 44,069,497.5 kilometers per second. From this, it also arose in my calculations that 1 second has, in each case, exactly that number of chronons that the light constant of 1 septillionth of a millimeter contains in itself, because a chronon has a length of 105 septillionths of 140 millimeters, and because exactly that number of chronons is able to pass a certain point, from the source to the fade-out of a beam of light, as the speed of light contains in itself. So, in the present case, around 20.394 x 1030 chronons per second. This was even easier to calculate since I knew that space and time are dependent on each other. Therefore, both time holds space in itself as also space holds time. From these results, however, my acceptance has arisen that through the transformation and lowering of the speed of light by the half-life, also space and the chronons change themselves, according to which, then, normal space would have to change itself to hyperspace and the chronons would have to change themselves to tachyons, which continue to exist in hyperspace as the smallest units of time at their own old speed, according to which the oldest tachyons would therefore have to have a speed of 44,069,497.5 kilometers per second in their own hyperspace. It also became clear to me that each dwindling away of a half-life creates its own hyperspace, thus, already 7 different hyperspaces, 7 half-lives equals 7x 6,347,755,102,040 equals 44.434x 1012 years would have to exist in our universe. Furthermore, it also became clear to me that time travels into the past or future can only be associated with this fact, because somehow, the traveling object must be manipulated in such a way that the flow of chronons is steered. So for example, if tachyons with a speed of light higher than ours and present in a hyperspace or normal space would be stored around a traveling object, then it would be hurled into the past, while a flow of chronons below our current speed of light must have a journey into the future as a consequence. This has become clear to me, but the how, that has remained a riddle to me. It is now also clear to me that the chronons can only stay and move in normal space, while the tachyons only move in a hyperspace. This, then, along with many other things that have become perceptible to me, about which I would still like to say nothing today, however, because I am not yet sure of the results. Yes, what could still be said according to my calculations, after the end of the next half-life, our light constant would have to be 172,146.45 kilometers per second. Now to these things, the big question: to what extent are my calculations and findings right? Meier says you are marvelous, simply marvelous. Billy says why? Meier says if I'm not mistaken, then your calculations have turned out to be very accurate. Is that so, Father? Pata says. Meier says judging by your facial expression, the calculations must be very accurate. Pata says they are. It is stunning and unbelievable. Quetzal says, are your statements and explanations actually not based on retrievals from a memory bank? Billy says certainly not. There are enough people in our group who have seen how I dealt with the calculations for nearly 36 hours. Quetzal says, and you have, in fact, retrieved no data from a memory bank? Billy says no, Quetzal, I already said that several times. Quetzal says that is phenomenal. It is simply unbelievable. Then how did you come to the necessary basic values? Billy says I just no longer know that so exactly. I made various calculations based on assumptions and certain information that I had from Sfath and Askit. With this, I then calculated for about 3 hours and suddenly had a basic datum which seemed very plausible to me. With this, I then calculated further and finally, after many hours, came to those results which I have presented to you all. But with everything, it is completely impossible for me to explain how I came to the basic